Hey, what's up guys? Welcome back to Adventure Built. My name is Kelly.
I'm Trevor.
And today we are back in the shop and we are removing my nitrogen shocks off my Ironman kit and we are installing the Foam Cell Pros.
Time for an upgrade.
Stay tuned. Hey, what's up guys? Welcome back to the channel. So I've had my Ironman Stage 2 suspension kit with the nitrogen shocks for right around 3, 4, or 5 months now, and it's been an amazing kit. I have zero complaints to it. However, Ironman sent us these Foam Cell Pros, and this is the upgrade to make it a Stage 2 awesome Foam Cell Pro kit. I don't know what else you would call it. The Foam Cell shocks are somehow an upgrade. I'm not quite sure why. However, I have a local resident expert on the Foam Cell Pro technology.
Yeah, so I've had the Foam Cell Pros on the 4Runner for,
Probably over a year.
Over a year, yeah. The shocks are phenomenal. It's a great do-it-all shock. And it's probably one of the best suspension kits out there. So for this, one, it's beefier. Two, on the Foam Cell Pros, you have an adjustable ring. So you can adjust these collars up and actually adjust the front end lift on there. The other thing is the foam cell technology itself. So foam cell technology is, instead of a nitrogen gas being pumped in here, you have a piece of open cell foam actually inside of here, and that balances the pressures inside there. So what that does, it cuts down the shock fade and everything that you get after long washboard roads and stuff like that, that normally, you know, all gas bubbles and everything else form inside, and your shocks essentially become useless at that point. But because these things are so overly built, they're large, they have a lot more actual oil in here, and because they have a larger diameter, and the threads actually on here work as coolers as well. So you don't need remote reservoirs on these. These work really well over long washboard roads. They tested these extensively in Australia. They actually developed them for the Australian military and for all the Land Cruisers and everything else over there. So they're highly tested, really overly built, and just awesome feel in all conditions, whether it be on the road or on the trail.
And honestly, if it's good enough for the Aussie military, it's good enough for these guys.
Oh yeah.
Definitely. And also, a few days ago, I went out in the desert and I found 3 different off-roading situations in which might really show the difference and the dynamic difference between the nitrogen shocks and the Foam Cell Pros. I got a high-speed speed bump and I hit it at different speeds. Also a high-speed kind of a jump out in the desert, and then a slow kind of departure angle kind of scenario. So we will do a side-by-side comparison of the nitrogen shocks and the foam cells with the exact same suspension, and hopefully see some differences.
Yep.
Yeah.
One thing that I did forget to mention is the difference between the nitrogen and the Foam Cell Pros. The Foam Cell Pros are actually rebuildable. A lot of people don't realize that. I don't think they have rebuild kits available yet. I know that they're coming sometime in the future, but you can rebuild these things. And it's cool because you can actually rebuild it yourself. You don't need to send it into a shop because you don't have to pressurize it. Yeah. And the other thing is that it has a 3-year, 60,000 kilometer warranty as well. And that equals to, I don't know metric because I'm American.
Higher level math.
Yeah. I don't know. We're weird. We don't use metric in the States, and so I don't know.
But I'll put the conversion right down here. That way you guys can see exactly what that warranty entails. We are going to blow through this install. If you really want the full how to install this kit, because we're just doing a shock swap, I will link a video here or here that will show the original install up here. The original install of this kit, of the Stage 2 Ironman kit. All right, let's do this.
Do it.
just got the driver's side of the front end tore apart, and we want to do a real quick side-by-side comparison of the Foam Cell Pros and the nitrogen shocks from the Ironman kit. And I'm gonna let Trev, who is the resident Foam Cell Pro expert, talk about the differences between the nitrogen and the Foam Cell Pros as we see it right here.
One of the first things that you notice straight off the bat is weight. The foam cells are a lot heavier than the nitrogens. I mean, whoops.
Oh, gravity.
This thing, I mean, is super light. This has got some heft to it. And I know Ironman actually did a video talking about the differences, and we can link that in the description below. They go through, talk about the details of the weight and everything else. However, here, I'm just gonna point out weight number one. Number two is, again, the diameter, because these have a lot more oil in them than the nitrogens. So it's a lot beefier all the way around.
And the Foam Cell Pro is 1/2 inch thicker. It's 2.5 inches for the Foam Cell Pro and 2 inches for the nitrogen shocks.
Yeah, and the other thing you'll notice is the length. So while the bodies are the same length, the piston is a lot higher on the nitrogen right now because of the way that the systems work. The nitrogen, you know, is a charged system, so it's pushing out on that constantly, where the foam cell is not pushing out on it. You can actually just pull and push this in as you need it. So it's completely different system. So if you're looking at it and be like, oh, that's too short. It's not. It's just the way that the systems are, and it's just the change in the valving inside there is how it not bounces. What's it called?
Rebounds.
Rebounds. Thank you. While this, it's literally just pushing down on it. Mm-hmm. So that's the main differences.
A lot of different engineering going on in the Foam Cell Pros compared to the nitrogens.
Yeah, it's very different. They've been using these in Australia forever. It's kind of new technology. There's only a couple brands in the US that use foam cell, and I think
they're lost.
Yeah, I think that it is a far better shock.
And let's talk real quick about how to set these up. Obviously, these are adjustable with a ring system where you can actually do on-vehicle adjustments with these. You can get a spanner wrench, and you can actually turn these on the vehicle to adjust the ride height. Now we're going to get this reinstalled in the vehicle and move on to the rear.
Do it.
Do it. Got the driver's side in, and it looks really, really nice. They were a little bit of a pain to get in. So the way that we do it, not using a spring compressor to do the install, is you basically use the truck weight to compress from the bottom control arm. However, because of the Foam Cell Pros not being gas charged, they don't automatically push out. they were starting to compress and then stay compressed. So we had to figure out a way. I came up with that idea to basically put a heat shrink wire cover over a pair of needle nose pliers, that way to not mar up the rod, and use that to kind of push the rod up into place, and we ended up getting it to work. So now this side is done, and we're moving to the next side, and then we're gonna start the rear. Cookie break?
Ooh, cookies.
Thin mints. There's a lot of delicious going on right now. Last one. Cheers. Cheers. We just finished the front. It looks really, really good.
It does.
We learned with the Foam Cell Pros, it's a little bit more challenging because there's no compression like in the nitrogen shocks. It's not being forced up.
Yeah.
So you have to manually pull it up and try to keep it there. It definitely was not easy, but we came up with a couple workarounds and it seemed to work out all right.
Yeah, honestly, if I were to get the front, you know, without just changing out the shocks, I would get them pre-built.
Yeah, definitely
I
get 'em pre-built.
It's minimum cost for them to build it, and you know, it's a lot easier.
It's super worthwhile.
Yeah.
So we have already removed one of the rear shocks, and now we're gonna do a side-by-side comparison of the nitrogen Ironman rear shocks and the Foam Cell Pro Ironman rear shocks.
Yeah. So pretty much, it's just like the front. It's gonna seem shorter, but they have the same length once it's spread out. A lot beefier. It's significantly heavier. A lot of fluid, super beefy. The one thing to remember with these is that the eye is offset and angled. So it will only install in one direction. And if you're getting contact, pull it out, flip it around, and reinstall it, and it should be fine. The other thing is sometimes you can't, it may be too short here. Just pull it out, and under the protector here is another rubber gasket. You pull it out and you pull this down, and it'll pop down, give you enough room for all your bushings.
When I was installing, I put the bottom eyelet in, and it started to impact the axle itself. So obviously, all you have to do is flip it around. There's no side-by-side, there's no left and right. It's just forward or backwards. So you just gotta make sure that they're angled forward. That way they clear everything.
Yeah. The sticker orientation does not matter.
Not at all.
So it may be inside on one, outside on the other side. So don't worry about the sticker, just go by the eyelet.
Yep. All right, let's get these things installed. Do it. Do it. That last test was at 20 miles an hour, and I didn't notice a huge difference between the IRONMAN Nitro and the IRONMAN Foam Cell Pro. They both absorb so nice. Let's see what it's like out in the desert. That was the high-speed comparison at 5, 10, 15, and 20 miles an hour on the atypical speed hump behind the grocery store and this larger whoop out here in the desert. Now, how does the nitrogen shock compare to the Foam Cell Pro, both from IRONMAN 4x4? And I have to say, they're very, very similar. The testing on the speed hump behind the grocery store, they were almost the same. Even at 20 miles an hour, I didn't really feel a big difference between the nitrogen shock and the Foam Cell Pro. Now, however, when you get out in the desert, it's a little bit different story. Once I got out here in the desert, the 15 and 20 mile an hour test hitting this large whoop right behind me here was where the Foam Cell Pros really shined. I don't know why, they seem to have just a better rebound. They absorb that shock just a little bit better, and I don't quite know the technology behind each shock, but that's my personal opinion on the shocks. They just rebound a little bit better. By no means am I saying the nitrogen shocks are not quality. They are also very, very high quality. I did the Alpine Loop twice with the nitrogen shocks, as well as finished up the second half of the Arizona BDR with the IRONMAN 4x4 nitrogen shocks, and they really worked flawlessly. Comparing the IRONMAN 4x4 nitrogen shocks and the Foam Cell Pros is basically like the nitrogen shock is an Oreo and the Foam Cell Pros are an Oreo dipped in milk. They're both awesome, but one's just got that one little step ahead. All right, let's get over to the low speed obstacle and see the difference there, if there is any at all. Two disclaimers before I get into the overall comparison. One, all this testing was done at street tire pressures. I run my tires about 40 PSI, and that's the way the tires were for all of this testing, same tire pressure. Two, I am fully aware this is not a scientific type testing. There is no control group, there is not scientific at all. This is merely the best testing I could think of to do to kind of visualize how these shocks perform. Okay, now my overall thoughts between the IRONMAN 4x4 nitrogen shocks and the IRONMAN 4x4 Foam Cell Pros. Now, like I said before, I've had the nitrogen shocks through the Alpine Loop in Colorado twice, getting up in the big mountain passes. I've had them on the second half of the Arizona BDR, and they really perform awesome. I had zero complaints for the nitrogen shocks. I have had these Foam Cell Pros for just over a month now. Trevor and I took them to Moab, and they performed flawless. Out on the trails, we spent 4 days just beating the bejesus out of our trucks on the ridiculously hardcore rock crawling Moab trails. and I will have a link to the first video right here or here, whichever they show up. But yeah, the Foam Cell Pros performed flawless in Moab. Zero complaints at all. We ran those trails for 12, 14 hours some days, and they really worked hard, and they were amazing. The Foam Cell Pros had the exact same feel in Moab at the beginning of the day as they did at the end of the day. There was no shock fade. They ate up everything I threw at it in that 4 days. Time to answer the question that everyone has been asking me. Are the Foam Cell Pros worth the investment over the nitrogen shocks? And I'm going to have to say it's really up to you. If you can swing the extra cost and it's not going to hurt any of your builds or anything that you're doing, I would say 100%. It's just a little bit better. Like I said earlier, it's basically an Oreo cookie dipped in milk instead of just the Oreo cookie. They just have a little bit higher quality feel. I really can't put my finger on it exactly. It's just a little bit better. However, is it worth the extra cost? It's really up to you. I would say if you can swing it, go for it. You will not be disappointed. All right, guys, I really hoped you liked this video. If you have any questions about the comparison that I didn't quite answer in this video, comment below. I'd be more than happy to answer them the best that I can. Obviously, I'm no engineer. I don't know the technology, but from my personal experience, that's where my opinions are gonna come from. All right, guys, if you liked the video, hit that thumbs up. Be sure to subscribe. See you guys next time.